You don't necessarily feel reduced energy the day that you're actually eating less. A lot of times it builds up, right? So your energy intake the day before a lot of times reflects your overall energy the next day. And much of it has to do with your body just reprioritizing what's important. So if you are reducing calories because you're trying to lose weight or you just want to do things for longevity that way, I understand. The reality is that it is going to sort of whittle down performance in certain ways, and it is going to make your body reallocate resources to different things, which can leave you feeling sluggish. So there's some ways to sort of circumnavigate that, and we'll just go on down the line. I ask if you can leave a comment down below. It does help out the algorithm significantly to have some good engagement and people talking on this video. It just helps get it out there to all the other people on the interweb. So if you don't mind, just drop a quick comment for the algorithm. Let's go ahead and jump right in. The first one is published in Frontiers in Physiology. Now, this isn't anything super eye-opening at first, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it kind of is. B vitamins specifically, when you're in a caloric deficit or when you are training harder or when your energy intake is lower, are hugely beneficial. So vitamin B1, for example, helps with ATP production itself. So it's literally producing energy. We forget that B1 plays this role. B2 can act as an electron carrier. So it ends up helping with what's called various different redox reactions. So it actually can help carry electrons across the electron transport chain to ultimately produce energy. B3, that's niacin, that is a precursor to NAD, which turns to NADH, which affects the electron transport chain. I could go on and on and on, but essentially these are all extremely critical for mitochondrial function. So simply taking a B complex vitamin when you are in a deficit to get above and beyond the usual daily recommended allowance. You're not going to overdo B vitamins. The only B vitamin you could really overdo is B6 if you're sensitive to it, in which you might get a headache and get a little overstimulated. But B6 is also like a really cool cofactor for amino acid utilization. So bottom line is, for just energy synthesis, taking a B complex multivitamin or just getting some B vitamins in one way or another, whether it's like bee pollen or something like that, go for it. Next up, talking specifically on the cognitive piece, there was a study published in Geriatric Nursing that looked at vitamins B6 and B9 and B12 specifically for cognitive function. Really interesting stuff. Essentially, they found that B6 and B9 reduced homocysteine levels. Now, homocysteine, when it's elevated, especially during a deficit, homocysteine is going to decrease mitochondrial function and ultimately reduce ATP. So what you'd want to do is you'd want to decrease the homocysteine before it ever becomes a problem, right? So B6 and B9 and B12 to a certain extent, because it helps support methionine, which can help in this process as well, essentially is bringing down homocysteine levels. Not to mention, if homocysteine is high, it can decrease your nitric oxide production, which decreases the blood flow to the brain. So when you're not eating a lot of food and you start feeling that kind of sluggishness, remember that food, just simple calories, it's going to help increase vasodilation. But if you're not getting the calories in because you're reducing your calories overall, then you're going to have less overall blood flow to the brain, just flat out. But the line is drawn a little bit when you go into like extreme caloric deficit, right? Like if you're fasting, then the brain kind of brings up energy because it becomes a survival tool. So there's a very fine line, right? If you're just reducing calories, you feel kind of sluggish. If you're fasting where you have these like clear on and off switches, then you can really turn it on when you're fasting, and then when you eat, you kind of feel sluggish. It kind of does the opposite. And now to double this up, B9 is also inversely correlated with insulin resistance. So there's some mechanisms there that are still being uncovered a little bit, but B9 seems to really improve glucose tolerance. Not to mention, again, the B6 and the B12. So if you're really like dealing with like hunger issues, or you're dealing with like just low energy in general, B6 and B9 will help light up the brain a little bit, but also going to lower the homocysteine levels, lower the insulin levels, and lower the CRP, so that your brain and sort of metabolism function a little bit better, a little bit more cohesively. So again, if I had to choose the B vitamins, I would choose B6, B9 and B12, but really just a B complex is going to be really, really good there. Another one you may want to throw in there is like 2, maybe 400 milligrams of Alpha-GPC. This is essentially an easy to utilize form of choline, essentially. So choline is a precursor to acetylcholine, which is really the primary neurotransmitter for just keeping the lights on in the brain. So a lot of times when you're sleep deprived, your acetylcholine levels are a little bit lower. So Alpha-GPC is just a hyper absorbable form of choline. But realistically, like eating eggs, things like that, you're going to get a sufficient amount of choline. That's why a lot of times people do really light up when they eat eggs. They're like a power food if you're on a diet, because you just feel alive, even if your calories are still pretty low, but you got to be getting the yolk. But again, Alpha-GPC is something, it's in a lot of energy drinks and things like that, but I recommend just maybe even taking it straight up. The next one is one that I touched on briefly, but bee pollen. Okay, bee pollen is particularly interesting. It's one of the most nutrient-dense foods literally on the planet. There was a study that was published in Pharmaceutical Sciences. It's interesting, this particular study is a rodent model study, but there's plenty of human model data on it. This rodent study just illustrates it very easily. They induced inflammation in rats using carrageenan and a couple other things. Okay, so they made them basically have high levels of inflammation. And then they gave them an infusion of either saline or bee pollen extract, like the pure concentrated bee pollen via an infusion. I'll just read you what the researchers had to say because it was quite fascinating, and I'll explain how that correlates with like energy in a deficit. Bee pollen significantly reduced exudate volume, leukocyte accumulation, granulation tissue weight, angiogenesis, VEGF, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Essentially what that means is it turned down the immune system overdrive. So a lot of times, especially when we're in a deficit, like our immune system kind of heightens a little bit, like there's a little bit of a stress response. Well, even if that wasn't happening, having immune system overdrive is never really a good thing. I don't think people realize how much energy the immune system takes. So when you turn down like VEGF, you turn down the granulation weight, you turn down these things, it's less energy having to be diverted to the immune system to be in overdrive, and it's literally just more energy going into just basic function. If you've ever like started to get sick and you realize just how fatigued you are before something hits you hard, it's a perfect example. Like all energy gets robbed to go there. So bee pollen can be really good for that. But not to mention, you're looking at something that's getting you all your B vitamins. It's got vitamins A, C, D, E, and K in it. It's legitimately an anti-inflammatory food. It's extremely high in what's called quercetin. Okay, quercetin is what's going to help induce the body to produce its own antioxidants, but bee pollen itself is high in what's called superoxide dismutase, which is an antioxidant that your body builds anyway. So bee pollen's literally just created from bees that fly around, get pollen, bring it back to the hive, mix it with their spit, sounds kind of nasty, and put it into a nugget. It's that simple. You're basically just getting the nutrient-dense part with enzymes that are making it easy for the body to utilize. So for bang for the buck for calories, it makes a lot of sense. The next thing, if you're low on energy, people forget that good old-fashioned electrolytes actually give you energy. When you are in a deficit, insulin levels are lower, you're gonna lose more water through natriuresis, which means you just pee more, and that means that you're losing your minerals. Even if you are eating the right foods, lower calories just means you lose more. We require sodium and potassium for the nerve impulses, for our body to actually move. But we get so hung up on like physiology that we think about our body all the time and nerves and signal, okay, muscle, body. The brain, guys, the brain, okay, this is like what's powering all this, and we have lots of different signal transduction going on there all the time, right? So sodium, potassium is critical for that. Magnesium and calcium also critical for muscle contraction and relaxation. Not to mention ATP formation. We need magnesium and calcium for the mitochondria to be able to create ATP. Now there's newer research coming out saying that calcium might be one of the bigger factors in terms of appetite. So if our calcium intake is low, our intracellular calcium goes up, and this actually triggers us to be more hungry. There's actually studies in the Proceedings of the Journal of Nutrition that found that when subjects had 500 milligrams of calcium with breakfast, they ate approximately 120 less calories at lunch. And we've seen this replicated in different models too. It reduces appetite, and it actually increases lipolysis, fat mobilization as well. So something interesting going on with our minerals there. So calcium is really important for that. But just flat out energy, sodium. We need that signal transduction. We need that impulse. I put a link down below for the electrolytes I use, which most of you know by now. I've been using LMNT for about 7 years now. I usually use their ready to drink ones now. I like the sparkling version, but I popped a link down below. That link gets you a free sample variety pack of their top flavors. So if you're on some kind of caloric restriction or you're fasting, this will curb your appetite, at least in my opinion. Like having that sodium curbs the appetite, but also gives you the energy boost without the caffeine. So that link down below, again, with any purchase, you get a free sample variety pack of their top flavors. That way you can give some to a friend, you can keep them for yourself. It is a game changer for appetite and is a game changer for energy without having the caffeine, especially in the afternoon or when it's hot. So that link down below, it's drinklmnt.com/Thomas. The next thing that people don't always think about is when you're in a deficit, you need to be able to adapt to stress. Okay. So you can wait for your body to adapt. That's fine. That's like a natural way to do it. Okay. But then there's also the use of adaptogens like rhodiola, ginseng, and to a certain extent, ashwagandha. Now, there's a study that was published in Pharmaceuticals that was looking at this specifically under like stress, right? What they found is that these kinds of adaptogens, namely rhodiola and ginseng, would actually help the adaptation to stress and ultimately bring cortisol levels back down to homeostasis. When cortisol levels are chronically high because we're reducing our calories, it starts driving up our appetite. It starts making this dysregulated hormone function. Cortisol is supposed to have these nice predictable spikes. And when we restrict our calories and we fast too much or we diet too much, cortisol actually ends up staying higher and having kind of unpredictable pulses in certain ways, which can make you have weird appetite surges and also just feel run down. So it turns out that these three, ashwagandha, rhodiola, and ginseng, can really help with the cortisol modulation. Now, the other thing is they can also help with heat shock proteins and the J and K and what's called FOXO pathway. These are stress and chaperoning pathways. What that means is when you get stressed out or when you overtrain, you have these adaptations that occur. A perfect example is a sauna. You go in a sauna, you have an elevation in heat shock proteins that help you adapt to the heat and make you more efficient at processing and sort of getting rid of unused components and making the cell stronger. Turns out that ashwagandha, ginseng, and rhodiola can help this whole process and help it happen more efficiently. This is really beneficial because, again, when you're in a deficit, you need to adapt. So using adaptogens can help you adapt to the stress of being in a deficit, therefore giving you more energy. Then we have tyrosine. Now, tyrosine is very unique. Okay, now you typically need about 2 grams of tyrosine to really do the job. Tyrosine is a precursor to like epinephrine and dopamine and really helps with like neurotransmitter formation. But there was a study that was published in Journal Psychiatric Research that threw people off because it said that tyrosine does not do anything. It did not increase neurotransmitter function. Like it didn't increase or create more neurotransmitters. But the fine print of the study, so to speak, like if you actually read the study, you find it actually helps significantly when a neurotransmitter was depleted. So if you're particularly feeling like low dopamine, for many reasons, right? It could be anything. Low dopamine, you can replete it by giving yourself tyrosine because it's such a building block of that. And when you're in a low calorie state, dopamine is lower. It just is. A, because your tyrosine's lower, but B, because energy is being allocated to different places. And the last thing you need is the motivation to go run a 5K when your body thinks you're dying, right? So you need to be able to support that. So a few grams or 2 grams even of tyrosine, 2,000 milligrams, could be hugely beneficial. And the last thing that I'll mention is a good old-fashioned cold shower. I'm not going to say cold plunging because cold showers are a little bit, I think they're better. They're harder in my opinion. Getting peppered with cold water sucks. So there's a study published in the journal Exercise, Nutrition, and Biochemistry that found just this, that found that it actually helped activate the sympathetic nervous system, actually helped appetite suppression in that case, and overall just gave a sense of energy. A lot of it's just simply you're getting an endorphin rush. Like when you do something hard and you accomplish it, there's endorphins, but also just an adrenaline spike can give you a bit of an endorphin rush. So I know it sounds weird, like why am I just gonna go hop in a cold shower? But if you are low energy from low calories, it actually works. So don't knock it till you try it. So as always, keep it locked in here. I'll see you tomorrow.